Agnes Ayres, Part 2. Agnes followed up Forbidden Fruit with another picture, this time teaming her with the hugely famous star Wallace Reed, 1921's The Love Special. The story was a romantic comedy that involved an engineer having to escort a business president and his lovely daughter, played by Agnes, on a trip. Romantic situations ensue. While Wallace Reed got great reviews, the Post saw the material beneath Agnes's great talents. They wrote, "So lovely and capable a creature deserves better than so safe and sane a trip through uninspired territory." Meaning, essentially, that Agnes just proved that she could hold and carry a picture herself, Forbidden Fruit, and immediately followed it up with just a girlfriend type role that was honestly beneath what she was capable of as an actress. However, the film seems to have done very well and survives today at the UCLA Archive and the Library of Congress. Agnes and Wallace immediately teamed up again in Too Much Speed. This film centered around Wallace as an arrogant race car driver that needs to grow up, pretty similar to the formula films William Haynes made later in the decade. Agnes played his sweetheart again. The film got good cast reviews and appears to have done well. Only a portion of this film survives today. Agnes and Wallace then joined Gloria Swanson, Bebe Daniels, Wanda Holly, Monty Blue, Theodore Roberts, Elliot Dexter, and Theodore Kozlov, and Cecil B. DeMille's all-star production of The Affairs of Anatole, an adaptation of the Austrian play Anatole by Arthur Schnitzler about the wandering playboy Anatole, played by Wally Reed. According to the Exhibitor's Herald, Anatole was the first production in which Paramount tried out a new system of assembling its rosters of stars into an acting company and pulling several of them into various projects at a time, hence why there were so many stars in one picture. Anatole leaves his wife, Vivian, played by Gloria Swanson, to find adventure and other women. Along the way, one of the women he encounters is Annie, played by Agnes, who is unhappily married to Abner, played by Monty Blue. As you can see here, she appears to be a happy wife until her husband discovers that she has taken the money from his safe box. Maybe Annie isn't the sweet young wife she is pretending to be. In despair, Annie throws herself into a river, only to be rescued by Anatole, as you can see here. But again, Annie suddenly switches from depressed and hopeless victim to duplicitous opportunist. She runs the gamut from appreciation and despair to what's in it for me, as she callously finds Anatole's wallet and begins flirting with him to try to keep it. It was a dynamic character that was a welcome change of pace for Agnes's previous long-suffering wives that she commonly played, or sweet young girlfriends. However, while the film was a huge commercial smash and popular with audiences, the reviews weren't always kind, particularly to Agnes. The New York Times stated that Agnes Ayres almost succeeds in creating a character. However, I disagree with that significantly. As you saw in both clips, she portrayed a very dynamic character quite successfully, who has layer upon layer of various intentions, motivations, and personalities. Annie is again simply fascinating, just like Mary was in The Forbidden Fruit. The difference this time is that Annie is not the sweet young wife she appears to be. Not only does she steal from her husband, she also ends up stealing from Anatole and keeping the money to take home to her husband and give it to him. And in terms of Agnes' success, just take a look at the acting she does with just her eyes when she instantly hatches the plan to flirt Anatole right out of his money. It's complex, it's interesting, and it's just good acting. Apparently someone at Paramount did take notice, though, because she next was given the role that would come to define her career and allow her to leave a lasting legacy as a true movie star. Lady Diana Mayo in The Chic opposite Rudolph Valentino. Lady Diana is introduced early on in the film as an independent, headstrong, modern woman, quite ahead of her time. Take a look here as Diana frankly tells a studio that she's not interested in marriage. Not only is it incredible that a female character in this story in 1921 is saying such a thing to a rich man, but what's more incredible is Agnes's acting. I was immediately struck by how amazingly accurate her mannerisms, facial expressions, physicality, etc. were in portraying the awkwardness of breaking up with someone. The way she looks at him, nods to him, shakes his hand are just brilliant moments of realism, but also reveal the subtle humor of which Agnes was highly capable of conveying. The Sheik, Ahmed, played by Valentino, has kidnapped Diana later. While she was appalled at first, she eventually develops a strange fascination for him and falls in love with him. Take a look at this other clip from another scene. Ahmed has to go out in the desert wind. Diana is, on the surface, distressed because she is stuck in his lair. But look at her face. She also is trying to hold back the feelings that are growing for this man that she keeps pretending to abhor. It's also interesting to note that in the film, it's Diana that makes the first move when she disguises herself as an Arab woman to attend a party where Ahmed will be because she's so fascinated by him, before the kidnapping. It is only when she notices her affection that Ahmed whisks her away to his lair. While obviously I don't condone kidnapping, I find it very interesting that filmmakers in 1921 had Diana technically get the ball rolling in their romance by making the first move. It further depicts the independent modern woman that Agnes was playing as Diana. Eventually, Diana realizes that she loves Ahmed, and when she risks her life to save her, she decides to stay with him and they live happily ever after. The Sheik was a huge smash hit. It broke attendance records at major New York theaters and brought in over $1.2 million in 1921, around $20 million today. It also broke box office records around the world and even ran for 42 weeks at some theaters in France. While the commercial success was incredible, critical reviews were mixed. Variety did not like the acting and was rather insulting about Agnes, calling her matronly, rude. However, Motion Picture News said that Agnes Ayres looks the part and takes advantage of every opportunity to register her ability. Critic Edward Weitzel wrote, Agnes Ayres is a beautiful woman and acts with feeling and finish. The Sheik catapulted Agnes's already growing stardom into the stratosphere. She was huge when she entered 1922, just huge. A real fast side note about Agnes and Valentino. Their chemistry was simply astonishing. I cannot understand why Paramount didn't decide to capitalize on their combined star power and team them into subsequent films. They would only go on to appear in one more film together, The Son of the Sheik, but more on that later. I can only assume that the studio thought they would be even more lucrative separate in their own vehicles than they would be together. Agnes's first star vehicle of 1922 was the Lane That Had No Turning. It and most of Agnes's other star vehicles of the early 20s are unfortunately lost, along with most of the other Paramount silent films. While I can't find information about a huge fire like the one that happened at Fox, I did find out that Paramount had no preservation program until 1980, so many of their films were just simply deteriorating because they just weren't taken care of, unfortunately. The Lane That Had No Turning was a melodrama involving Agnes again as an unhappily married wife, which kind of was her formula at this time, but appears to have been a big hit. Exhibitors Herald called it Agnes's triumphant Paramount debut as a star in her own right, and went on to say that she shows real dramatic ability and personality. Agnes had 4 other Paramount star vehicles in 1922. Bought and Paid For, The Ordeal, Borderland, and The Daughter of Luxury. All were dramas except for The Daughter of Luxury, and I can only assume they were popular due to her star power after The Sheik. I found a review for Bought and Paid For that gave Agnes kudos for her performance. Agnes teamed up with Wally Reed again for one final film together in 1922, Clarence, another comedy for the duo and her only film that was not a starring vehicle that year. Apparently, Paramount did see the value in teaming Agnes with Wally. Sadly, this was the last of their teaming, as Wally passed away from complications due to drug addiction less than a year later. Wally's widow, Dorothy Davenport, encouraged the press to release why he died in an effort to help others with the same disorder and issue, and even made a film called Human Wreckage to bring attention to the issue and make drug addiction less taboo of a subject. Agnes continued making star vehicles in 1923, including Racing Hearts, The Heart Raider, The Marriage Maker, and Don't Call It Love. Paramount seemed to finally realize that she was equally adept at comedy and lighter fare and let her make all of these films, which were such. Racing Hearts involved Agnes's character, Virginia, becoming a female race car driver, and it got great reviews in the Exhibitor's Trade Review. Don't Call It Love saw Agnes reteamed with Jack Holt and got good reviews as well in the Exhibitor's Trade Review, which said Agnes Ayres as Alice Meldrum appears as the realization of an ideal, the perfect woman. Agnes's biggest hit in 1923 was more or less a cameo role. Cecil B. DeMille's first epic version of the Ten Commandments, which this time saw 2 stories presented, the Moses story and a modern-day story involving folks grappled with obeying the commandments. It again was another Paramount star-studded production, co-starring Theodore Roberts, Estelle Taylor, Richard Dix, Rod LaRocque, Leatrice Joy, and Nita Naldi. Agnes appears briefly in the finale of the film when Richard Dix's character reads Leatrice's character the story of Jesus healing a leper outcast who is played by Agnes. As you can see here, Agnes commits 100% to her role, both physically and emotionally. While it is brief, it is compelling and memorable. The Ten Commandments was the highest grossing film of 1923 and held the record as Paramount's highest grossing film for many years as well, making $4.2 million then, over $75 million today. Agnes would go on to make only 6 more films at Paramount between 1924 and 1925, including When a Girl Loves, Bluff, The Guilty One, The Story Without a Name, and Tomorrow's Love. Stay with me for Agnes Ayres Part 3 as I begin to discuss those films.